College football season is finally getting close, and with that, we are now ready to start making some predictions for the season. In this episode, we're going to talk about the college football playoff. We're going to make our picks, but we're going to do it in a unique way. I have Tom Dianora from the Ranger Rush. I have Nick Tully from the Clemson Pawcast joining, and we're going to draft teams most likely to make the college football playoff. Before we dive into that, I want to remind you that this channel is sponsored by Ready Vets. If you're a pet owner and you live in the upstate, search Ready Vets in your Google Maps. Make sure you save them. If you ever need them, because they're open 7 days a week. They're open late when you can't get into your vet. They're available. So without further ado, let's meet the crew. Tom, Nick, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
How you doing, guys?
Good. Thanks for being here. Before we dive into our current endeavor for this season, let's do a quick little review of last year. We did something similar, but last year was more about conferences because conferences were not ridiculously huge. They made sense in some respect. So we all tried to see how many correct conference champions we can get. And I thought I was looking pretty sweet there for a while with Michigan, Washington, and I still had Georgia. Louisville was in the championship. I thought Oklahoma was a dark horse. I was sitting pretty, but of course, Nick makes a late run with Texas is back for real. And then, of course, sadly, Florida State. So this will be a little different, Nick, but any comments on how last year went?
Yeah, just tough to see Tom with the 1 star. I have confidence in him this year, improving his picks. But no notes. It was a lot of fun last year. Let's say goodbye to the 4-team playoff. I think, we're all Clemson fans. I think it was a strong setup for us relative to the BCS. Some people are critics of it. I think the 12-team playoff's brand new. A lot of critics of that too. So I'm really excited with you guys to kind of take a different perspective on making picks like this as we look ahead to it expanding for 12 teams, which I think is happening for 1 year, 2 years till they go to 14.
I don't know that they know that for sure, but yeah, it should be 2 years. Then maybe they'll go to 14. I think they're pending on how much the SEC and the Big Ten can really take over and sort of justify that. We'll see. Hey, Tom, last year was not your best showing, but as always, you're a big growth guy. Always last place the first time, first place the second time. Any words of wisdom before we dive in?
I was just going to say I didn't realize you'd be sharing last year's results. Kind of caught me off guard. Not too pleased to relive this, except to be reminded that I am also an honorary Oregon State fan still. So rooting for them in the Pac-2. Got a 50-50 shot at winning that conference, so pretty excited about it. But yeah, like you said, normally I bounce back the next year, but with different settings this year at the 12 team, who knows?
All right, so we'll keep the rules very simple, and we're just going to share them with everyone, make sure everyone's on the same page. Very simple. Whoever drafts the most teams that make the playoffs win. If there's a tie, the tiebreaker is playoff wins. It doesn't matter if you get the national champion. If I got more teams in the playoff, that's it. That's the winner. It'll be a snake draft. We'll do 5 rounds. So even though there's only 12 teams that make the actual playoff, we'll pick 15. So hopefully, we all want to win, but hopefully between the 3 of us and 15 picks, we can get the correct 12 covered. That'll be our team goal here. So I'm going to zoom out here. And we'll start with Nick Tully. Nick, you went last in last year's draft, so you're going to get to go first, and then it'll come to me, and then we'll snake it around with Tom. I'll let you pick, and then if you want to give commentary now or you want to wait to the end of the round, I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, I'll just get right into it. I'm going to take the first overall pick, the Georgia Bulldogs. I think I'll just maybe make a couple of comments. I do not see a world where Georgia misses the playoffs. I think it's probably the safest pick on the board. So I won't say go Dogs, but I think they have a tough out of conference schedule. But I still see them making it into the playoff on brand name, if nothing else. But they're also one of the most talented teams too. So yeah, pretty confident.
That's a solid pick. I actually had them as my number 2 on my board, so this works out for me. I'm going to take the team that was number 1 on my board, obviously, the Ohio State Buckeyes. I don't know that they're necessarily better per se than Georgia, but I like their path more. I honestly think they'll go undefeated and win their conference, whereas Georgia has, they got to play Clemson first of all, which will be favored, but it's no gimme. But then they go to Texas, to Alabama, to Ole Miss. They won't drop all 4 of those, but if they drop 2 of them and then in just a bad game lose the SEC championship, maybe they still get in, but maybe not. I'm not sure. So I like the Buckeyes for just insane safety. I don't know. I don't really see a way they don't get 10 wins. And even if they end up with 10, if it's 10-2, they're probably still win anyway. So Tom, it's to you.
Yeah, I mean, those to me were the clear top two. So I just found out literally just now that I'm picking third. So that definitely makes it a little harder because it gets a little interesting here. I think those two really felt like the gimmies to me. I'm going to go with the team that I don't think they're even going to maybe win their conference, but I think they're going to get in, the Oregon Ducks. And I say that as an honorary Oregon State fan. It pains me to say that. But I really like what they're building with Dan Lanning, and they brought in Dylan Gabriel as a transfer. So I really think that even if they don't win the Big Ten, they're going to have a good enough year, get into that 12 team. So that means I go again, right?
Yep.
So with the fourth pick, I will take, loaded SEC, and with a new coach, I will take Alabama. I know it's kind of an interesting pick. It's just hard for me to imagine in a 12-team setup, even with as loaded as they're and full as that conference is now with all the expansion. It's hard for me to imagine that brand not winning enough games and weaseling their way in.
Yeah, and that's certainly fair. I thought you were going to go a different direction in the SEC, and so that's what I'll do now. I'll take Texas. I'm really, really high on Texas. They were my third team on my board, so I've got my 1 and my 3 here. Man, I like Quinn Ewers. If he gets hurt, they have Arch Manning behind him, so you actually have QB depth. They lost a bunch of wide receivers, and they used the portal to replace them, including taking Isaiah Bond from Alabama. They swiped Andrew Makuba from Clemson. There's a couple teams that just went all in the portal. They knew that their team from the high school ranks was really peaking, and they kind of cashed in with NIL to use the portal to try to win now. I think they're a legit national championship contender, and getting Georgia at home is huge. If that's on the road, I might be a little bit less excited to pick them, but I'll take Texas. I feel really good about Ohio State and Texas making the playoff. So, Nick, it's you for consecutive picks.
Yeah, I'll probably go quickly with these 2 picks. We're definitely into that next tier, I feel like, at this stage. I'm going to go back-to-back Penn State from the Big Ten and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Both of these picks, well, a little bit different. I think from a Penn State's perspective, schedule sets up favorably for them this year. And just in general, they're, for some reason, a well-established brand. It takes a lot to get them to drop out of the top 10 historically the last couple of seasons, even though they tend to beat the teams they should beat, lose to the teams that are ranked above them or are more talented. So I think it's going to be another kind of above average season for Penn State. When the dust settles, the Big Ten's going to get its teams in, and I think they're going to be in that mix. Onto the Fighting Irish. I think the schedule, very light for the Irish this year. It's kind of a 3-game schedule. Even if they do drop that first Texas A&M game, which I think they're very much in that game to win on the road at College Station. I think they only play the one true road game against Purdue in week 3 in the first 15 weeks of the season. I expect the Irish to really get a lot of momentum with that schedule. They bring in the transfer from Duke at quarterback, but they also bolster their offensive coordinator, a guy coming in from LSU. He was at Notre Dame a few years ago as well. So, he's got a pedigree of working with Heisman quarterbacks in the past. Not saying I'm suggesting that for Notre Dame's new quarterback, but I just like their odds being that independent with a good brand to really be ranked highly heading into the finishing stretch of the season.
Yeah, I think those are really good picks. I think those are kind of like the last 2 picks that you could really, really feel good about. I love Penn State there. I was hoping you'd overlook them. The thing about them is they typically will lose to Ohio State and Michigan every year, and that's why they don't make it. But A, if they did that, they'd still make it in a 12-team, and B, they don't play Michigan. So, are they going to lose at West Virginia, at Southern Cal, at Wisconsin? I don't think so. They might lose at home to Ohio State, but it's a whiteout at home. They might even win that. So I see them as a potential 1-loss team.
Good call.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's easy in the past to kind of pick against James Franklin, but I think when you got a 12-team cushion here, Ryan, and who knows, they might figure it out one of these times, beat Ohio State, to your point. So,
yeah, I like them. And the Notre Dame with the schedule, as you mentioned, I'm not crazy about them. They lost both tackles, and the replacement tackle then got hurt. So I think there's some vulnerability there. But the schedule's so soft. They go 10-2. I think they put them in on name brand, like you said. So I've got a tough pick here. There's 4 teams left I really, really like. But I'm gonna kind of leverage the situation more than just picking the team that's necessarily the best. I'm gonna go Utah. I've always liked Utah. I think they're well coached. I think relative to the Big 12, they're the best team. I see them maybe a 1-loss team or a 2-loss champion, which would put them in with a bye. Not that I really care for purposes of this exercise who gets the bye, but I think their playoff odds are really good by virtue of sort of the setup with the automatic qualifier. So I'll take Utah, and then I'll cross my fingers and hope that one of the two, maybe 2-ish teams I really like remains when Tom comes back to me.
Yeah, Utah was my pick, right? You took it right from me. I had a feeling you would. I also, to your earlier pick with Texas, really, I was really debating them or Alabama. So that really was a tough decision for me as well. So puts me in a bit of a bind here. We've really already dug in pretty deep on the SEC and Big Ten. So to your point, thinking about, the automatic bids for the conference champions, I'm going to go a little bit off the board here with a group of 5 team, Boise State out of the Mountain West.
I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of teams there that I like, but it's actually the AAC that gets pretty crowded. So I felt the Mountain West and Boise State was probably, as far as the group of 5 goes, probably the safest pick.
All right, and then you're up again.
So this pains me, and I don't believe in DJU, but I don't think the ACC is very good, so I'll go with Florida State.
Okay, let's pause here and discuss a little bit, because I'll make my pick, and then I think it's an interesting play off your picks. Because I'm going to go Clemson. I'm going to go Clemson here. I think Clemson has the better quarterback than Florida State. They have the quarterback who took the starting job from the guy who's at Florida State. I think Clemson has better wide receivers than Florida State, who just lost Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson. There's other teams in the ACC. I'm not overconfident in Clemson by any means, but I just have questions about a DJ Uyunglele-led Florida State team that lost a ton of talent. And I know they use the portal to rebuild quickly, but I think you look at Jordan Travis throwing to Coleman and Wilson, and now you look at Uyunglele throwing to not those guys, and I think it's a really big step down. The defense, the pass rush in particular, is going to be good, but I lean Clemson or even a couple other teams over Florida State. So I'm going to have Clemson, and I'm a little surprised and excited that I was able to land them here. Love the Boise State pick, though. We'll see what Tully does here.
Oh, God.
No, go ahead.
Who's your Tom? Let's see. No, Tom, go for it.
No, like I said, as a Clemson guy, I don't like picking Florida State, and the whole DJU thing has me doubtful because I've now seen him be mediocre for 2 teams that I root for. But I just think overall, I have a hard time. I think Florida State still got momentum, and I have a hard time believing that Clemson's going to just turn it around this year. I think they're in a downward trend, hence the Brad Brownell shirt. He's a coach at Clemson who cares about winning and leverages the portal and NIL, unlike our football coach. So I feel like Florida State, especially with the game being in Tallahassee this year, that kind of it was another deciding factor for that. But, I could see that really going either way. Like I said, I don't think it's a very good conference. I mean, that's the narrative that goes on with it, right? But I think especially so this year, there's not really a team that's really separating itself.
All right, Nick, you have your last 2 selections.
Yes, sir. Really interesting board at this point. There's, call it the second place team in the Big 12, that has a shot at that auto qualifier, or maybe they're both really good teams and they can get in. Or do I go more in the direction of G5? I see another potential champion there that could stand out, and the betting odds favor that team as well. Or do I go mine the SEC a little bit more? I'm kind of debating between these choices here. I think what I'm going to go with, just from like a rooting interest standpoint, I'm going to go with the K-State Wildcats. Chris Kleiman, I think he's in his third year now at K-State, coming over from North Dakota State. Going with the Wildcats. Utah's a strong pick, Ryan, to win the Big 12. They're consistent. They get Cam Rising back. He's been there forever. But I like K-State. I think their schedule's pretty solid, and they're just seemingly a more consistent team year after year under Kleiman. They also have Colin Klein as our offensive coordinator, I believe. So he's a legend at K-State. I think everything that guy touches turns to gold there. So I'm going to go with them. And for my final pick, man, there's a lot of directions I can go. I'm going to go with Ole Miss out of the SEC.
I love the pick, and I also like it for what it allows me to do here, but I'm going to let you explain.
I think it's a schedule. It's an odds thing. It's a Lane Kiffin rise of his program thing. I think this is potentially their best team and the schedule that sets up best for them in his history in terms of who they face in the SEC. I was debating a couple other teams. I won't kind of spoil that because I know you guys still have some picks to make, but I'm going Ole Miss, and there's sort of an the odds favor them at this stage of the draft too. So medium confidence, honestly.
I think it's an outstanding pick, man. I really like Ole Miss, and when Tom was picking, they'd kind of been sitting on top of my board for a while. I had them above Florida State, I had them above Boise State, I had them above K-State, who, to be honest, I didn't have in my top 16. I only ranked 16. But I was kind of hoping you'd pick them because I really wanted to justify this next pick. Number 11 team on my board, the Liberty Flames. I'm all in. I like them more than Boise State. I think that their schedule is a cakewalk. Their tough game is a road trip to App State, who lost 5 games last year, and that's their toughest one. I think they go undefeated. I think they make the playoff. And I admit that I'm biased because several years ago, I remember they came to Clemson for a baseball regional, and it kind of struck me. This is a really big school with a unique cultural position. I could see them kind of becoming very relevant in sports. And slowly but surely, you're seeing them do it. They win NCAA tournament basketball games. They're getting good in football. They've been pretty decent in baseball for a while. I like Liberty, and I think they make the playoff this year. That's actually one of my more confident picks. So that rounds out my board.
Takes home, Tom.
All right. Well, this is, I guess it's the final pick of the day, right? So not left with a whole lot here. I mean, I suppose I could mine one of the Big Two conferences again. I think I'll do that and go with LSU.
All right. Tell us about that LSU pick while I pull up our board.
It was really, I didn't have them too high. I had actually one of my ACC sleepers is actually Virginia Tech. I think they're going to have a really good year, but I don't know if I can go as far as say they're going to make the playoff. But in a mediocre ACC, they could. But I ended up going with the SEC because, again, LSU, just being in that conference and getting the leverage of the schedule, and I think they'll get enough love from – they could get enough love from the community. They're my last pick, right? But I think they're on an upward trend with Brian Kelly, and I think let's take a flyer on them pretty, every now and then they'll surprise us with a big year.
Yeah, there's a couple teams that I had on my draft board of 16 that didn't get selected. I thought were kind of surprising to be left out. Michigan, defending national champion, they can pretty easily go 10-2. They've got 3 tough games. They have to host Texas. They play Ohio State, of course, and Oregon. But if they could just win one of those, they're probably in the playoff as the defending national champion. None of us picked them. I toyed with the idea of picking Miami, but I had a couple teams that had pretty high fall to me. And then Missouri and Tennessee both get left out. Ole Miss and LSU get in instead. I did have Ole Miss really high, but I actually had Missouri and Tennessee just a hair above LSU. And it's making me a little nervous that there's so many SEC teams you could legitimately pick. Any thoughts on just the SEC and how many teams I'm sure you all considered?
Well, they have like half the teams in the country now, right? So
No, I was on Mizzou as well, Ryan. I had number 10 on my board. They were going to be just based on kind of where everything else had netted out, I was thinking of maybe picking them, but the fact that Ole Miss was there, I went with that one. Might find out I should have picked Mizzou over K-State. We'll find out. But I think that it's funny, like that conference is a gauntlet, but there are so many teams that we've listed that actually have a favorable schedule in that conference. Mizzou, Ole Miss being two of those teams. I think actually Texas A&M could be an interesting dark horse just based on how their things line up. If they beat Notre Dame and go on to have a respectable SEC showing, I think A&M is another team that if we did a 30-team board, you guys might not have even have had them in that range. So, there a few are interesting like that. Ryan, big +1 to Miami. Is this the year that Miami and Mario Cristobal can put it all together? Things do set up pretty favorably for Miami, just from a talent perspective. They obviously have, is it Cam Ward transferring in from Wazoo?
Yep, Washington State.
A lot of things for him.
Oregon State running back, Damian Martinez.
Yeah, just mining that Pac-2 for talent down there in Coral Gables. But those were sort of my teams that, Ryan, you mentioned that I had on my drop board. I actually had FSU a little bit further down the list below Miami, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Yeah, Tom, you referenced the ACC being weak, and the bottom of the ACC being weak, and certainly the bottom of the conference is weak with Stanford and Virginia and teams like that. But to me, there's like a 5-some at the top that's pretty daunting. Clemson, Florida State, Miami, who a lot of people are saying is the most talented in the conference, and then NC State, who just seems so close to being a 10-win team. Maybe if Grayson McCall is the guy they think he is, that's going to be tough. And then Virginia Tech, I'm all in on Virginia Tech. They've got the schedule. I think they're this year's Louisville, where Louisville had kind of an easy schedule and they were able to take advantage of it. I think that's Virginia Tech this year. I think that game in Blacksburg is going to be really a really, really tough one for Clemson. Maybe their only ACC loss. So I like all of those as at least dark horses.
Yeah, it's interesting the way you put that, because when I was saying the ACC is mediocre, it's more so like they have a cluster towards the top of a bunch of teams that I think are good but not great. And that's kind of where my sense of them being mediocre is. They don't have like one or two teams that are truly outstanding. At least doesn't appear that way at this point. But Virginia Tech, if we had if this was a couple rounds longer, I might have found a way to get them in there. But they were in my consideration set. But it's kind of, I'm not too happy with how this draft worked out. I mean, I had a lot of picks right before me that I had on my board. Utah was a tough one. I had a feeling that one was coming. I had Ole Miss above LSU. I had LSU, Missouri, Tennessee kind of in a cluster, and I just chose the bigger brand, not bigger brand with Tennessee, but the more consistent program, I guess, with that. So my 5, I gotta be honest, I don't love how it looks, but we'll see how it goes.
The interesting thing here in the 12-team playoff is which conferences get 2. I'm thinking about the ACC and the Big 12. Notre Dame spoils that party a little bit for some of these conferences. And of course, the G5 will automatically get one team in. Not automatically, but they will get one team in. It won't be an automatic qualifier for any of the conference champs. It'll be the playoff committee that votes whatever the best team is from the G5 in. So I'm confident about Notre Dame, knowing the G5 will get someone in. It's really 10 spots. And if you have 2 spots taken up by the Big 12 and the ACC champion, I don't really know if there's room for that second ACC team or that second Big 12 team this year.
So Nick, that's a perfect segue because, we're drafting here. So Tom may not really be picking LSU to make the playoff, but he was forced to draft him here. So I kind of want to close by giving everyone a chance to share their actual picks and get those out there. So just in fairness to everyone. So here are my picks. I have Clemson making the playoff. I have Utah, Georgia, and number 1 seed Ohio State. Those are the 4 teams that get a bye. And then I have, and I'll just go left going down. I have Alabama, Michigan. So Michigan was a team that I have, but we didn't draft. And just because they're the 9 seed doesn't mean they're more likely to make the playoff than, say, Notre Dame at the 11 seed. I did have Notre Dame higher in terms of odds, just not in terms of seed here. So Alabama, Michigan, Texas, I had really with a lot of confidence there. Liberty is the 12, but still with a lot of confidence. Penn State, Ole Miss, Oregon, who Tom took. I thought that was a rock-solid pick. And Notre Dame, I'm worried about them, but I love the schedule and the brand, and I just can't imagine they leave out a 10-2. Notre Dame. So I'll let you guys not correct, but set the record straight on your actual picks in the draft format.
I don't have my top 12, sort of locked in, Ryan. I agree with a lot of where you have here, maybe not necessarily the seeding. And something that I'm considering is who, let's say Georgia, for instance, I'm pretty confident they're going to win the SEC outright in that championship game. The team that loses to them, I wonder how far they fall down the seeding after that game. Clearly, Georgia's going to be a formidable opponent, so maybe they won't fall too far. But I think what you want to be is the third place Big Ten or SEC team, because I think you don't stand to, number one, run your guys out there that can get injured in that game. Number two, face getting embarrassed by, a Georgia or an Ohio State who, could cause your seeding to erode that much more. So I don't really have any swap outs, Ryan, from your overall picks here. If anyone, if you made me pick one, I'd probably swap Boise State in for Liberty, possibly K-State in for Utah. But I think overall, maybe I'll just go ahead and say Michigan doesn't really do it for me this year.
Yeah, you know what? This is outdated. I actually had Miami in that slot over Michigan. So
Okay.
That's my bad.
Yeah.
But beyond that, everything's identical. So yeah, it's really tough to put this many Big Ten and SEC teams in. So if I'm only putting one Big 12 team in, you almost have to find a second ACC team. So that's probably Miami. That's my bad there.
Yeah. Tom, any big adjustments on your side?
Most of the teams I would have in, I'm not going to get into the seeding because I don't have that laid out, similar to you. But I would swap in Boise State for Liberty. I'd swap FSU and Clemson. And then other than that, I think Utah is going to win the Big 12. I had K-State as my number 2 behind them. But K-State can't win that conference. I don't see them getting in.
Would you have Michigan or a second ACC team?
I probably would not have Michigan. That's where I probably would go with I don't know if LSU is going to make it, but just looking at this list, it's like, who would I? Because I would have Ole Miss. I would have. I don't
know about a fifth SEC team unless it's just
Tennessee very well could make the playoff.
Yeah, could happen, I suppose.
Yeah, I was really in my last pick. I was really between LSU and Michigan, but let's call it LSU instead of Michigan.
Yeah, Michigan's the one I like least here. I think my official picks I'll post will have Miami instead. But okay, well, great. I appreciate you guys doing this. This was a lot of fun. Any parting thoughts? And Nick, before we go, definitely tell folks about the Clemson Pawcast.
Yeah, 100%. First of all, Ryan, thanks for having me. Great to join your show. Good to see both of you again. This is really fun. Let's see how this one plays out. I'm eager to watch our picks pretty closely. But yes, I'm part of the Clemson Pawcast. We are coming off our hiatus to get some preview stuff done here coming up soon. Anywhere you listen to audio podcasts, you can find us: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Stitcher. I don't know what people use these days, but we're out there. Take a look for us. We're also on Twitter or X at Clemson Pawcast. Same thing for Facebook for people who use that platform.
Yeah, I've been listening to it for years. Great listening. It's the Pawcast, not the podcast. So that's how you can remember it. And Tom, I know you're launching a YouTube channel very shortly. You want to just give a quick plug before we get out of here?
Yeah, there's nothing live yet. It's under construction, but it's called The Ranger Rush. It's about the New York Rangers. You might gather that I follow them pretty closely based on what you see behind me. But the regular season starts in October, preseason September, late September. So I'll probably be getting it going by mid to late September. So be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, we'll look forward to it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thanks.
See you guys.